So, welcome again, everybody. My name is Florian Andrianiazy. I am the managing director and co-founder of PhDTalent. We are a company based in Paris. We've been founded in 2017, and our mission is to connect companies and to promote the value of PhDs and PhD students to the society and to the companies in the private sectors. Today, we are very pleased to be part of the very first European Doctoral Day. For this day, we partner with Onepoint for this very first webinar on a very hot topic, artificial intelligence, and more precisely, the topic today is from human to cognition to algorithmic bias, building fairer AI in research and industry. So to introduce the topic, bias in AI does not start only with in the model and cannot be solved only by the model. So to understand how to build fair AI, we need to connect human cognition, technical methods, organizational practices, and regulation. By putting this perspective in dialogue, today we will also show how doctoral research creates value in companies and in society. So today I'm pleased to welcome Nina Franiatte and Antoine Saillenfest from Institute Onepoint, also based in Paris, in France, more generally, and to discuss this topic. So welcome, and thank you again, Antoine and Nina, for being here today. Also, maybe to start, could you, each of you, briefly introduce yourselves and tell us how your research journey, PhD journey, led you to your current role at Onepoint? Maybe Nina, to start.
Yes, thank you, Florian. Hi, everyone. So my name is Nina, as Florian said. I'm a researcher in cognitive psychology, and I recently completed my PhD, conducted jointly between a French lab named LabCide. It's a cognitive and developmental psychology lab based in Paris, and with Onepoint, the French tech company. So just briefly, my research mainly focuses on the processes involved in solving reasoning problems, particularly in the dual process theory, which I'll come back to later. And I also focus on the implementation of de-biasing interventions to improve decision making. And I let the floor to Antoine.
Thank you, Nina.
Yeah, thank you, Nina. My name is Antoine. I'm a full-time researcher at Onepoint. I'm working on natural language processing, especially in training fairer decision system in AI. I'm at Onepoint since 8 years now, I think. More than 8 years. I did my PhD more than 10 years ago. It was an interdisciplinary PhD in cognitive science and AI. Every day at Onepoint, I do research. I co-advise PhD, and I participate in training of my colleagues about AI topics, AI in general, natural language processing topics in particular.
Thank you, Antoine. So maybe can you tell us, both of you, what is the difference between when you do research in academia, like you did during your PhD, and now your work at Onepoint? What is the main difference in practice?
Yes, so maybe I can start, and Antoine, you complete me. So in academia, usually we do like fundamental research. We're working on several theories, we are writing papers, etc. And at Onepoint, for me, I lead research and development projects related to cognitive biases. So for instance, my work includes delivering client training, designing experimental protocols to identify some biases that may be problematic in professional settings, or contributing to scientific publications.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nina. I would just add that probably in a company, research is more focused on developing products, on interacting with clients, training clients, as Nina said. In academia, the work is maybe more theoretical, but in my lab, in the lab where I did my PhD, it was very application oriented. Also, we had a lot of connections with the industry in our lab. So probably it depends, but in companies, we are more focused on applications, probably.
Okay, thank you. So to deep dive into the topic of today, we hear the word bias all the time in AI conversations, but it can mean, I think, many different things. And what do each of you mean by bias in your own work, in your own discipline? Maybe Nina?
Okay, so I can start. I will bring the cognitive sciences point of view, and maybe Antoine will bring the more technical point of view. So for me, in cognitive psychology, biases are often defined as systematic deviations from normative, logical, mathematical reasoning. But I guess to better understand what a bias is, it's helpful to first understand what reasoning is. So just very briefly, in cognitive psychology, the dual process theory is a well-known framework that explains reasoning as the interaction between two types of processes or system. On one hand, you have the fast intuitive system, which is often called system 1. And on the other hand, you've got a slower, more thoughtful, deliberative system, which is often called the system 2. And the traditional view, although it has since been questioned, but it's another issue, is that a majority of cognitive biases arise from this system 1 processing because it is fast, and therefore it makes some shortcuts that we call heuristics. At this point of the presentation, maybe it's important to say that cognitive biases should not simply be seen as errors in a negative sense, because they are often the byproduct of efficient cognitive shortcuts that generally work well under conditions of, yes, thinking fast and slow, of time pressure or uncertainty. So in some cases, these same shortcuts can lead to systematic errors or distortions in specific contexts, such as probability judgment, social evaluations, decision-making, other risks, etc. But this is only the point of view of cognitive science, so I let you complete, Antoine.
Yeah, I will complete. So yeah, the term bias often sounds very negative when we say it. It sounds like unfairness. It sounds like prejudice. But from the technical side, statistical bias in the data are what allows the system to learn patterns, and that will help them make decisions. So statistical bias is the art of learning in machine learning, especially when we talk about harmful bias, because it's often what we mean when we say bias. We mean harmful bias. I will say that bias are not harmful per se. They are not harmful a priori. They are harmful because someone has decided that they are harmful. It's a matter of values, of political norms, political views, etc., ethical views, but it's not an harmful bias a priori. So just to summary, from a technical side, we need bias to learn something in machine learning, deep learning, AI in general, but some bias are judged for external reasons harmful.
So your definitions are quite different, but would you say that you are that you are studying the same problem from different angles, or two different problems but connected problems?
Do you want to answer first?
I can say that at the very end, we are together building systems that we expect are not harmful towards minority groups. We intervene at different steps. Our topics are connected because the cognitive biases Nina mentioned will be reflected at some point in the data, and the statistical biases we can see in the data are, for one part, inherited from cognitive biases, from decisions humans have made when collecting the data, when producing the data, when using the data, something like that. So there are connections, but we intervene at very different steps in the process of creating solutions. At my side, I'm intervening on the data, on the decision model, on the decision itself. Nina more broadly intervenes on the people that will develop, use the system, or interact with the system in general. Nina, you may want to
completely
complete.
Agree. Yeah, one of our shared ultimate goal is to develop intelligent systems that do not make biased decisions against minority groups, for example, as Antoine said. But even if we are not working on the same topic exactly, we have complementary perspectives. And maybe one dimension, that is often overlooked because it's also less visible is the human factor, who are the people behind the machine, for example. So the developers that can themselves have cognitive biases, but they're also obviously the technical point of view to intervene directly in the system, on the data, etc. That is very important. And this is the part of Antoine.
Okay, thank you. And you said that you intervene in different parts of the process, I would say. But are there some parts in which your approaches meet, or do they differ completely?
I will say that, yeah, our approaches meet because when a company develops a solution, she has to bring around the table every person that will be involved in the process, and we should coordinate to develop a solution that is taking different perspectives with different stakeholders around the table. So yeah, we meet at some point, but practically in our research are very different. So we don't meet. We connect regularly, but we are not working on the same topic, I would say.
I guess, again, it's complementary. Like the goal of human factors, social sciences in general, is to provide a complementary perspective to mathematical, technical sciences by highlighting the human dimension behind the system. The people who design AI shape its behavior. So ultimately, it also shapes the societal decisions. And this is what we do with human factor, but it's not completely separate from the more technical view.
Great, thank you. One thing you raised, Antoine, before, is that that not all biases are necessarily bad. You said that it was a question of norms and different aspects. Could you maybe go a little bit deeper in the definition and in that nuance that bias is not necessarily bad? Can it be good?
Yeah, bias can be also good, in fact. But yeah, often when we talk about debiasing a system, people often say remove all the bias, make a very fair system. But if we removed all the bias, that makes no sense in machine learning, because we could be able to learn nothing.
In the mind too.
So bias are essential to learn something. But yes, as I said, some bias are judged harmful. It's not because they are not harmful per se. If you don't take care, this bias, for example, gender bias in a decision system, will be used to take a decision. The system will use the bias about gender to take the decision. It's kind of a mathematical shortcut to take a decision, to optimize its decision process. And we decide, because of moral, because of some ethical values, some political values, that these bias are harmful. It's a matter. It opens, in fact, it opens up a debate about the political, ethical. How can I say? It opens an ethical and political dimension of this on this topic, and in fact, it reflects the fact that some bias are judged harmful in some contexts. For example, gender. We don't want to take to consider gender when deciding if we should hire or not someone in a company. So the fact that we decide that gender does not matter or should not matter in this context is, in fact, reflections about the society we want to live in. In fact, we want to live in a society where gender doesn't matter in the hiring process, where gender doesn't matter in the attribution of some loan at the bank, etc., etc. It's deeply, even if I'm working on the technical side, so I'm working on mitigating the influence of some factors like gender, like sexual orientation, like something like that in a technical system, we cannot ignore that these attributes, these sensitive attributes, we want to remove, we want to debias the system according to the sensitive attributes. They are sensitive because we have decided that they are sensitive. Someone has decided that they are sensitive. And this someone can be the society or someone in particular, for example, a stakeholder, etc., etc. And yes, bias can also be good, because sometimes we decide to inject bias to favor one underrepresented group, one minority, because we have also decided, and it's a decision, it's an ethical decision, it's a political decision, that we need to take care, especially about this group. So bias is not necessarily harmful, a bad thing.
So do you consider that the real question is not how do we remove all bias, but more which biases do we consider acceptable or unacceptable, and why?
In itself, the question, should we remove all bias, makes no sense from a mathematical perspective. As I said, no bias means nothing to learn. But yes, the real question in what kind of what part of the information do we want to use to make a decision, and what part of the information in the data should we avoid using during the decision process. And it's a matter, and we have to think about the context, the ethical value we want to propagate in the society, etc., to determine what kind of what pieces of information we want to use, we accept using.
Okay. We talked from a research perspective about the topic, but why does this topic matter beyond the research world itself? Why the society, why companies, why institutions should care about these questions? Why is it a matter?
Nina, maybe you want to start?
Maybe I can start with a general example, and then you can conclude with something more AI driven. For the cognitive biases, it matters far beyond academic research because cognitive biases directly shape real-world decisions. So, for instance, we analyze some clinical settings in medicines, which are often characterized by high pressure, time constraints, information overload, etc. And a lot of paper identify that intuitive impressions can sometimes override statistical reasoning and lead to serious consequences, such as, for example, diagnostic errors. I recently read, by the way, that each year 5% of American adults experience a diagnostic failure, so it's a lot of people, which are partly due to the short duration of clinical visits and the limited time available for expert reflections, so in other words, to cognitive biases. And this example highlights one of many examples of the importance of research on human decision-making and the critical need to identify ways to reduce bias reasoning. And as you said before, Florian, to identify especially not all biases, but the one that can be harmful in a given context and lead to problematic decisions.
Yeah, I will just complete by saying that, yeah, when a company takes the produce solutions that are used to take high stakes decisions. So, for example, in the health system, in the justice system, in banking, in many very sensitive areas like this. Removing bias is taking care of some bias, of some harmful bias, is very important. We can adopt a legal point of view, for example. In Europe, especially with the AI Act and GDPR, it's mandatory now legally to take care of this harmful bias, and companies are at risk of financial penalties, very big financial penalties, several millions of euros, if they don't take care about bias. So it can be a motivation to take care about bias, harmful bias for the companies. But another motivation for the company can be also the trust in their product. If a product is perceived as a black box that discriminates negatively minority groups, by the customers, by the users of this solution, the users will not trust these solutions, will not use the product. It can have financial consequences, but it can also affect negatively the public image of the company. So taking care of bias may have many consequences, and when we take high-stake decision, even if the system is slightly biased towards some group or another, when the scale is when the system is applied to millions and millions of people, it can even a slight unfairness can affect a lot of people and have very detrimental consequences at scale. So companies should take care and are forced now by the law to take care about harmful bias, especially in sensitive areas.
We'll talk about the law just after, but practically when a company take care of this issue, what kind of needs or what kind of question do they actually have when you talk about with companies? Maybe more generally, do they start with the technical problems or with the human and organizational one? Maybe Nina?
I think we're gonna have different answers because it depends on the context and on the company. For my point of view, organizations are mainly asking where can human reasoning introduce unintended effects, especially in sensitive areas, as Antoine said, and how can we better anticipate and reduce these risks in the professional practice. But if they are talking to me, they are talking about the cognitive science and the human factor point of view. So I'm not dealing with more technical issue, but what it means for me is like helping people understand where biases come from the cognitive point of view, how they appear in professional decisions, how they can be recognized or avoided. And actually, it is exactly the logic behind what we call the de-biasing training. It's making these cognitive mechanisms visible, because often they are not, so that people can better reflect on their own judgments and avoid biased decision. And it can take, obviously, very concrete forms. Maybe just to illustrate with one example regarding artificial intelligence and human factor, we've run awareness sessions with developers who wanted to better understand how their own ways of thinking and decision-making processes could influence the system they designed and ultimately shape the behavior of these systems. So we were talking together about cognitive biases, at which point of the process they can just go in the systems and what to do to avoid them. So these are the main questions when organizations come to see me, and it's, I guess, very different of what you have, Antoine.
Yeah, quite a different approach. But what I can say is that often there are the context. It depends on the company, but some companies want to deliver fast solutions. We want to develop a solution very fast and shape it, to ship it publicly very fast. But the taking care in a company about these questions of bias, of harmful bias, in fact, it intends to change the way the people think about the project, and we want to force or to I don't know how to say that precisely, but we want to make the people aware, the different people that intervene on the solutions, aware of the possible bias they have in their development process, in the way they shape a solution, in the way they develop it, in the way they collect the data, etc. Make them aware that every choice that is made during the process of designing and developing a solution can introduce bias, can be detrimental. And so the idea is to change the perspective of the people that will develop the solution in a company. But often the reality is that we need to deliver fast and we don't think about it, and yes, we have habits, we have developing habits, we have designing habits, etc. We also just want to use the product that is available because we know it works, but these topics are often they are often a little bit forgotten, but it shouldn't. It's not true for big companies that develop very high tech, that act in very sensitive areas, because they as I said previously, and we will talk about the law later, but they are forced by the law to take care of this problem. But for companies that ship products that are less harmful, let's say, it's more complicated to make them aware of the different of the ways every decision during the design and the development of the solutions can matter and can have consequences and introduce bias, harmful or not, but introduce bias.
But does it mean that it can you have a competition between fairness and performance? So in some way, in some AI systems?
Technically, as I said, when you learn, when you train a decision model, you use every bias in the data. So if you want to remove some bias because it's just harmful, you will necessarily say to the system, don't take the better way to achieve your decision. Take a slightly different way because I will remove part of what you used previously to take your decision. So yes, when you will remove some bias, you will necessarily affect negatively the performance of the system. It can be slightly negatively affect, but you will affect negatively, and there is a trade-off between the accuracy of the system and the fairness of the system. But those two measures, fairness and accuracy of a decision model, are not the only measures of the viability of the performance of a system. We should include also financial impact. We should also include societal impact measures. We should also consider different other measures that will to decide if a system is very good and has good performances. The performances are not only fairness and precision of the model. And one example can be if you have a system, for example, that recommends films on some platforms, on some movie platforms. If it recommends, let's say, action movies more, it's slightly biased towards action movies for men when it recommends a film to men. We can decide that fairness matter, and we can try to make the system less biased towards action movies. But it can have detriment at scale. It can have detrimental financial consequences. It can reduce the watching time of the audience, etc. And fairness. And we will ask the question: does fairness really matters in this context? If the system is slightly unfair, is it really a problem? Do we want to achieve fairness in this context? No, probably not. In some other contexts, for example, in the medical fields, if a system is biased towards white people over black people, for example, prioritizing the helping white people against black people, yes, in this case, probably fairness will have a weight, matter more than other performance indicators. So fairness and accuracy are one part of the evaluation of a system, and there is a trade-off between the two, but it's not the only way we will evaluate the system. We will integrate many other factors, many other performances indicators that come from the context.
Well, since your work has political implications, technical implications, do you sometimes encounter reluctance, resistance, criticism in your ecosystem when you meet companies? I don't know. Is that some behavior that you meet sometimes? Nina?
Not really on my side, because cognitive biases are indeed observable mechanisms, but interestingly, I encountered maybe a few conspiracy-minded profiles, people who believe that we are trying to trick or manipulate them, and this is very closely linked to the belief system of people, and it raises interesting research questions about the relationship between thinking dispositions, cognitive biases, etc. Recent research work, for example, has shown that individuals who score lower on measures of open-mindedness are less likely to improve through debiasing training than those who score higher. I lost the camera, right?
Yes. We've lost you.
Oh,
we have the sound, but
cannot...
not the image.
If you have sound, it's okay. My camera isn't working anymore. Okay, But this is all on my side, except some conspiracy-minded like profiles. We don't have much resistance to the topic of cognitive biases.
Yeah, I just I can what I can add is that in companies are social places. Companies are places where we meet people with different backgrounds, with different values, with different political views.
Yeah,
And
sure.
sometimes when we talk about these topics, about harmful bias, about gender, sexual orientation, religion, bias related to these topics that are highly political, we encounter some we open a debate with people because people think have different views on this topic. But at one point, should I speak for the company? It feels safe to debate on this topic, especially because the company participates in a lot of initiatives about promotion of the women in tech. They participate in some events during the Pride months. We also have internal training sessions about AI discrimination. So it feels like a safe place to debate about this sensitive topic. And sometimes the debate happens, but it's not a problem. It's very helpful. It means that we have an impact and that people are listening what we say. If that means it opens a dialogue between the researcher and the rest of the society and the rest of the employees.
Yeah. Antoine, you mentioned a little bit earlier that law and regulation also had an impact on the AI systems. In which dimensions? Where do legal and regulatory frameworks enter in the conversation on AI bias?
In fact, the GDPR and the AI Act in Europe are forcing the companies that act in some sensitive domains to test their solutions for bias, and they can be audited. And if they fail to pass, they fail the audit, they can be fined. They can be fined with very with million euros fine. So it can have very detrimental consequences. There is also what we call a right to there is also explainability constraints by the law in the GDPR. So everyone in Europe, in France, whose profile has been used to take some decision, has a right to ask the company that take the decision why this decision has been made using my profile, using my data. And so this right to explainability and force the company needs to implement some explainability tools they must show that they take care about the way the data is processed and the way the personal and sensitive demographic information are handled, especially. So the law is probably, how can I say that? I can say that the law for the company to take care about this question. The company should include as indicators of performance so some bias indicators, some fairness indicators, some explainability indicators, and they should not only take care about the financial side, I don't know, the number of expected clients, the number of expected sales, the number of the profits at the end of the year. They should also integrate the law and force, integrating some other perspective in the evaluations of the solution. So that's why it matters.
Nina, do you want to add anything?
I don't have much more to add because Antoine already said a lot.
And do you think, maybe Nina, do you think that researchers in that political and law environment, do you think that researchers in your respective fields have a role in shaping the public debate and public policy in AI?
Sure, to shape, I don't know, but to inform, yes, because the choice of some research topics, such as the biases itself, is political, so it can be influenced by governments, and in return, they may wait us to explain some cognitive mechanisms, to have a part in educational settings, for example, to help understand how it works and to make it works better, such as Antoine said before. Choosing to address and correct biases to prevent certain decisions that are considered problematic is also one of our role as a researchers. And I guess that's all.
Yeah, I can add that scientifics, I think, play an important role in the public debate. We, for example, have every year we have the scientific that warn us about the environmental changes, for example, from the GIEC. But in AI, we have the kind of the same thing. In fact, the European regulation on AI comes from scientists that helps writing it. Scientists often advise governments, are often included in companies in advisory boards, and they help shape how the company should evolve, what kind of solutions they should develop. I can say also that scientifics also help the research community to take care about to be informed and care about these questions. There is a lot of initiative in the scientific communities from scientifics themselves. I can mention, for example, Queer in AI, which is a movement that intends to rethink, let's say, the heteronormative, let's say, focus in science, especially in AI, and they are present in every major conference. They are present in many universities across the world. They also intervene in many events, the technical events in companies or outside in the big space. So the scientifics can intervene at many levels, either the governmental, in companies, in institutions, in the public debate, and they already intervene.
And there are also similar initiatives such as the Algorithmic Justice League, which addresses issues related to the impacts of AI, biases, etc. And there's a great TEDx talk on the subject if you're interested in this issue more deeply.
And in the other way, do you think that scientists are listened enough by the regulator and the institutions?
Yes and no, depending on the context. Sometimes in educational settings, yes. Sometimes in AI, depending on whether you are independent, working for Google, or in the lab, it's not the same thing. Are you listened, Antoine, by others?
I think the we have to say the same thing again and again and again. And at the end, at the very end, we will be listened. It was the case for the environment. Scientists were not listened at the very beginning when they talked about the climate change and something like that. And now, every major in France, for example, every major political organizations, maybe almost every major political organizations include some environmental thing in this program. In AI, it will be the same, and they already have been listed because the scientific, for example, I mentioned the European regulation, but scientific have helped develop this regulation, and typically the measures I mentioned about fairness, mandatory explicability are present in the regulations. In this regulation, precisely because scientifics have been listed on this topic. We can do better. We can make things. We can still do better things, but we start to be listened.
Great, that's a good news. That will be my last question before taking some question from the audience. Today, this webinar is organized as part of the European Doctoral Day. So our audience are mainly PhDs and PhD students and postdocs, etc. Is there one thing you would like doctoral candidates, PhD candidates, postdocs, and young researchers to take away from our conversation today, maybe from a scientific point of view, but also from a career, professional point of view?
Big question. Do you want to start?
You want me to start, Nina?
As you want.
Yeah, what I can say about this topic. I would say that profiles that can think about very important questions in depth, adopting an interdisciplinary perspective matters in company, and it's very important to have this kind of profile. Also, I would say that companies should move fast. As I said, they have to deliver fast. They have to ship products regularly. They have to evolve rapidly. But in the same time, it's important to have people that are aware about what the state of the art in some scientific domain, that are able to anticipate the next important innovations, the next important steps for one product, for a company, the next tool that will be that will matter in the next months. And that's where the scientists, the young scientists, or the scientists in general, can be important in the company. So they help anticipate the future, and they help shape the future of the company. They are not necessarily acting on the very fast track of the company, but they are on the slow track, and they can question the choice and help shape what will be what should be the next step for some product or some solutions.
Yeah, I completely agree. Maybe what I can add is that I hope this discussion shows that cognitive biases are not only technical or theoretical objects, but they are deeply embedded in social systems. And it means that our work as researchers does not stop at understanding how things work, cognitive mechanisms work, but also extend to understanding how it can affect decision in government, in political system, in law system, in people and context. And it also highlights the value of interdisciplinary thinking as we do today. And it's not always easy because sometimes we are talking about the same things just with different words. But it's, I guess, important to do it and to collaborate, whether we are working on debiasing interventions, technical system, decision-making, etc. Progress often comes from connecting perspective and between theory and practice, as we do in Onepoint. So maybe this would be my key message for today.
Wow, thank you very much to both of you. We have a few minutes to take some questions from the audience. I will take some questions that has been posted in the chat already. Maybe the first one, we said that biases are maybe very ethical and sociological points of view in some way, but who defines what's ethical and what's not?
This is yeah, this is a very deep question, in fact, and it's important. It can be a consensus in the society. So different society may reach different consensus on some topics. It can be a matter of power also. For example, some decisions can come from the direction of a company, from someone, from the manager of a team, the product manager, for example. So it's a matter of power, of individual power, for example. So yeah, it opens a lot of political, philosophical, ethical debates about who takes a decision that some bias are harmful or not. But it matters. In fact, this question is very important. One example I can say is that, for example, you have everyone knows ChatGPT from OpenAI, and ChatGPT when we interrogate them, we use them to answer a question about, for example, sexual orientation questions. A question about sexual orientations are related to this topic. The answers these systems outputs are judged mainly progressive for now. I would say for now it's mainly progressive, but in the same time the CEO, as I said, not Sam Altman, but Brockman of OpenAI, is also one of the main donor of the campaign of Donald Trump. And we can say, if he has a big power in this company, will the next version of ChatGPT be that progressive, especially in a context where companies that express progressive views in the United States are maybe financially fined or maybe penalized by the government. So interrogating, questioning who takes the decision, who decides what bias should we inject or remove in the solutions, for example, like ChatGPT, is important, in fact, and it's why it matters, because if one person decides that tomorrow the next version of ChatGPT must be more conservative than progressive, it may have a lot of impact, especially because this product is used worldwide, and it will propagate these conservative views around the world. So it's a matter of political debate. It's very philosophical, political, but I think we have to ask this question about who decides.
To maybe complete this question, would there be any way to represent the bias of any AI used in a certain decision-making process, so as to at least make it transparent for people involved in the process and affected by the results? I think that the question is, at least if we know that biases are present in the AI systems, present it to the customer or the user of the AI system. Is there a way to do this?
Yeah, there are probably ways. When we develop a solution, on my side, I'm more interested in the decision process, but there are a lot of things around a product. There are a lot of things, and especially you can have visualization, for example, a part that visualize some information about the system, about the inputs, about the outputs, about the connection between the input and the output, and bias can be made explicit, yes, at some point. If we cannot remove them, we can at least make them explicit. And in fact, I did not mention it, but there's a lot of connections between the fairness domain in AI and the explainable AI domain, because sometimes we talked about debiasing systems, but sometimes we cannot debias the system, but we want to test the system for some bias, which is more on the side of explainability. We want to evaluate if the system is biased, and we can make it explicit. But make it explicit is something that is complicated. There are different ways to do it, and the question that matters is, what do we want to make explicit? Why do we want to make it explicit? What are we expected to explain, and how we explain it to someone? If a system is biased, for example, and towards for example, some minority is affected negatively by the decision of a system, sometimes we have to explain it, but we have to explain why we keep the system like this. So what do we want to explain? We just don't want to say some minority group will be negatively affected by the system. We want to say this group will be negatively affected, but we have good reason to do it. For example, it's I talked about this with Nina previously, so it's and the context is particular. But if you have a pandemic, sorry for the pandemic, because we talk a lot about pandemic right now, but and when for example the hospitals are overcrowded because there is a lot of people that are ill. Sometimes the system, we will have to decide who we will take care first, who we will try to we will handle first, and we can decide that we will first treat the young people, the babies, the very young people, and maybe the old people will be we will take care of the old people later. The system is biased, and this bias can be judged negative because old people may be more at risk than young people, but it's a political choice. It's there's a reason, because young people are often more socialized, so the epidemic can spread more rapidly with them, etc., etc. So yeah, explainability is important in this case, but why we want to explain it? Because it seems unfair, and we have to explain why it's unfair, why we inject this bias in the decision process, what connections it, how it relates to the way we think the society should be. The young people matters most maybe than the older, which is very weird to say that, but maybe there's something like that in mind. So yeah, it's complicated. Explainability is important, but the real question is not what we explain, but what we want to explain and how we want to convey the explanation to someone. So it has a human side, an important human side.
Yes, and regarding transparency seen by human factor, there are also some concrete tools that exist to identify, for example, some step of the process of creating an AI, and in which steps, what are the most common biases identified by the scientific literature that can just come up, and how to overcome them. And these tools are made for improving transparency and for helping people to create some fairer, less biased systems, and I guess it's very important to use them to go to more transparency.
And I should add on this topic also that if we come back to regulation, that regulation force the companies when taking a high-stake decision in some sensitive areas to log every decision taken during the data management process, from collecting the data to taking a decision, and have a very clear map of what kind of decision has been taken at each step of the process of designing a solution and link the data through the process. So that's where also that's a connection between explainability also and the law, and how the law forces the company to adopt some process, some development designing process that improves the transparency of these systems.
Thank you very much. Our webinar is coming to an end. We will take one last question, which is a professional career question. My research focuses on fairness-aware AutoML. I have a general question. How can I find a job related to algorithmic fairness within a company?
I don't know. I don't know how I can answer. But I think when you are a young researcher, what matters is the network, is to discuss with people, with other researchers, to connect with other researchers in the lab, but also to connect with companies through events, through conferences. Companies are often present in conferences or on technical events. We have a lot of technical events, for example, in Paris. So it's important to connect with very different people. I think that's the better way. But to find, I think, what's hard for a young PhD researcher is that we, as a PhD applicant, we work during 3-4 years on the same topic, and we imagine that this topic is very important, and we have we think that this topic will be our topic for life, and we have to abandon this idea when we come to the market and accept to handle slightly different topic. So thesis is one thing, and getting the PhD is one thing, but after that, on a company, we will probably work on very different topic. But with connections, we will have gathered a lot of knowledge about the landscape of for example, AI fairness. If this person worked in fairness in machine learning in AutoML, but this knowledge will be useful, but for a large variety of tasks. Will the company need someone that to work specifically on this topic on fairness and AutoML? I don't know, and I think probably this kind of needs exist, but I don't know if there is a precise way to find a job on this.
Do you have any advice, Nina?
Any advice? Not really. Actually, it depends. I'm working on cognitive biases in my PhD and still no, but I guess it depends also on the interest led to the projects. For social sciences, sometimes it's a bit difficult. For AI, fairness, etc., it's a hot topic actually, so maybe it's easier to find some company who are interested in researcher who have the knowledge, the capacity of follow the scientific lectures, etc., to inform the company. So I don't have any specific advice, because it depends on the country, the context, the company you want to go in. But I have some hope that the person will find easily, because fairness is very interested and hot topic at the moment.
Well, thank you very much. We will end this webinar on these words. Thank you again, Nina. Thank you again, Antoine, for being today and for the very interesting discussion. Thank you, Institute Onepoint, for the support of this webinar. And we will be able to watch again this webinar on YouTube on the PhDTalent channel in a few days.